A little girl born to write and fascinated by nature created a worldwide environmental movement.
This edition of the Pest Geek Podcast is brought to you by Pest Routes. Pest Routes, supercharge your company with Pest Routes, the #1 pest control software to help you dominate your goals. Visit them at pestroutes.com and get your free demo.
Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek Podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek Podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back to another edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. I am Frank Hernandez, your pest geek, here discussing all things pest. We want to remind our audience to join in on the revolution. That's right, join in on the conversation, be part of the society. Pest Geek Podcast Listeners Group on Facebook. And we're on YouTube, we're on the web, pestgeekpodcast.com. Check out there the notes, everything that we put into the podcast. They're all on there. And now for today's topic.
She was first published at the age of 10 years old in a children's magazine called The St. Nicholas, dedicated to the work of young writers, in which the likes of William Faulkner and F. Scott Fitzgerald also wrote in. As a matter of fact, the magazine has an article in the American Heritage called "The Magazine That Taught Faulkner, Fitzgerald, and Millay to Write." In one of her writings in the article, on July of 1922, she wrote, the writer is now 14 years old, and told the League about the day of bird watching that ended with a resounding sunset. And this is what she writes. "The cool and approaching night settled. The wood thrushes thrilled their golden melody. The setting sun transformed the sky into a sea of blue gold. A vesper sparrow sung his evening lullaby. We turned homeward, gloriously tired, gloriously happy." You see, in 1925, she entered Pennsylvania College for Women as an English major, determined to become a writer. But midway through, she switched to biology and graduated from what is known today as Chatham University. Now, upon graduation from Pennsylvania College, she was awarded a scholarship to complete graduate work in biology at Johns Hopkins University in Maryland. And there she received her master's in zoology from Johns Hopkins University in 1932. Now, understand that you are in the middle of a depression and you're going to college as a very young student and graduating and getting a master's degree. For a woman, this was virtually unheard of. In 1932, a woman with a master's degree in the middle of a depression, what is she going to do? Well, she was hired by the U.S. Bureau of Fisheries, what is known today as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And she was hired to write scripts during the Depression for a 7-minute radio spot called Romance Under the Waters at a minuscule $19.25 a week. And this began her 15-year career in the Federal Service as a scientist and an editor, of which she rose through the ranks to become editor-in-chief of a publication from the same bureau. And she's always supplemented her income by writing feature articles on natural history for the Baltimore Sun. Now understand, she wrote pamphlets on conservation, natural resources, edited scientific articles. She was the editor-in-chief. In 1937, she wrote an article for the Atlantic Monthly called Undersea. In 1941, a book titled Under the Sea was a New York Times bestseller for 81 weeks. And it was eventually published and translated into 32 languages. In 1952, she published her award-winning study of the ocean called The Sea Around Us. In 1955, The Edge of the Sea. Now, these books all constituted a biography of an ocean and made her a famous naturalist and science writer in the public eye. She was already loved and respected for the writings that she wrote in basically story form. In 1956, she wrote a book called Help Your Child to Wonder. And in 1957, Our Ever-Changing Shore. By this time, she's an accomplished writer. The Depression is now over. The economy is improving. And she's had a 15-year career in government as a scientist, as a writer, an accomplished writer. And she is now, in 1963, she is testifying before Congress. And she calls for new policies to protect human health and the environment. Now, she lived until 1964, where she lost her long battle with breast cancer. In 1965, after her death, a book was published, The Sense of Wonder, which she hadn't finished before her death. Today, if she was alive, she would be on TED Talks. She would be writing books. She would be having her own podcast. She would be a worldwide evangelist for the environment. On the 100th anniversary of her birth, the Fish and Wildlife Service wrote this: one of the world's foremost leaders in conservation, her work as an educator, scientist, and writer revolutionized America's interest in environmental issues. In 1962, she wrote the book that would spark a worldwide environmental movement. And today we know that book as The Silent Spring. Her name was Rachel Carson. And this has been Pestacular History.
We hope you have enjoyed this edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. Until next time, have a pestacular day.
Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.